Welcome to Spine Chilling Chats podcast, where we like to spill the tea. If you're into the macabre and enjoy hearing about true crime, supernatural, or spooky experiences, pull up a chair, pour yourself a cup of tea, and get ready for some spine chilling chats with Manda and Ange.
Hi to all the spooks out there. I'm Ange.
I'm Amanda.
If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope that you enjoy listening today. If this isn't your first time, welcome back. We have another great episode of Spine Chilling Chats for you today. Today is another older case coming all the way from Germany. Trigger warning, this one has elements of sexual violence against women, children, and even animals.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Murder, attempted murder, incest, and animal cruelty.
Oh, go figure.
Yeah. I seem to always pick
The triangle
these ones.
of terror.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Well, let's hope this one doesn't eat feces.
No. It does drink a little blood, but...
I mean, that's whatever. I'd rather do that than eat poop.
Yeah. So please forgive me for any mispronunciations of any German names or words. Words are hard, especially those in a language you do not speak.
Yes.
All right, so let's get to it.
I'm ready.
On May 26, 1883, Peter Kürten was born in Köln-Mollenheim, a suburb of Cologne, Germany. It's spelt like Cologne. I don't know if it's spoken like Cologne, but that's what it looks like to me. To a life of poverty. So his family...
Aren't they all like poor? I mean,
Didn't have
not
much.
all the time, but majority
usually,
of them.
Yeah. Now, you, Amanda, need to check out the architecture in Cologne. I was looking at some of the pictures. You're really into the old styles.
Yes,
Like,
I love it.
there's a picture of like this church, and it's just gorgeous. But it's like a little creepy looking too.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah, so you'll have to check out.
In case you guys didn't know, I love old buildings and history and weird, creepy old houses and things. So that's right up my alley.
Yeah, you would really like it. You should look. Some sources stated that he was the eldest of 13 children,
Holy shit.
2 of which died at a young age, and others stated that he was the third eldest. So I don't know if maybe those 2 siblings who had died were older than him, making him the third eldest and the eldest at the same time because they were dead.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So I'm not sure. Either way, it doesn't really make a difference in the story.
No, it's a piece of shit. So
Yeah. The large family rented a 1-bedroom apartment. 13 well, yeah, 13 because the mom and dad. Yeah. In a 1-bedroom apartment. Oh my gosh.
I could not imagine a 1-bedroom apartment with just me and my son.
Yeah.
No.
No. I need my space.
Yes.
And so there's 1 bathroom too.
Oh,
1
my
bathroom.
God.
This is the whole Brady Bunch again.
Oh, no.
They lived in constant fear of the alcoholic, abusive father.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
Yep. His father was a molder by trade, but would spend most of his time in a local inn, drinking,
I mean, if you had that many people crammed into your house, wouldn't
you
stay?
drink too?
Would you drink and stay somewhere else?
Yeah. He would then return home and beat his children. Because why not?
Just add to it.
He also would make his wife strip naked in front of the children, where he would then rape her. And for those of you out there that say they're married, how can he rape her?
You can still be raped if you're married.
Yeah. If she doesn't want it, it's rape. But he would rape her in front of the children, and then unfortunately, due to the time in Germany, it wasn't particularly, they weren't particularly caring about battered women.
Oh.
So
Kind of
she
just went
yeah,
under the rug.
Yeah, like they didn't really care. She was made to endure the abuse and violence, and the children were made to watch it. Peter stated later, the whole family suffered through his drinking, for when he was in drink, my father was terrible. I, being the eldest, had to suffer most. As you may well imagine, we suffered terrible poverty, all because the wages went on drink. We all lived in one room, and you will appreciate what effect that had on me sexually.
Oh, no.
Well, one room, and his dad's raping his mom right in front of,
Ooh.
This had a major impact on Peter, who in 1888 attempted to drown one of his playmates. With Peter being the eldest son, he received the brunt of the abuse from his father.
Mm-hmm.
He frequently refused to return home after school. Although Peter was a decent student, he later stated that his academic performance suffered due to all the violence he endured from his father, which is really sad.
Yeah, and I mean, would you concentrate in school if you knew you were going to get home and get your ass beat?
No. Or have to see your mom get raped.
Or that.
Or just live in a one-bedroom apartment with 12 other people. Peter would run away for days to weeks. He would hang out in the streets with the delinquents and petty criminals. This is where he was introduced to different forms of petty crime, which he originally committed as a means to get clothing and food for himself while living on the streets, because he wasn't getting it at home. They were poor. 4 years after the attempted drowning at the age of 9, so he's doing this before 9. Like, that's so sad. That's so sad.
Wow.
So at the age of 9, he formed a friendship with a local dog catcher that was living in the same apartment building as his family. Peter began to accompany him on his rounds. The dog catcher often tortured and killed animals he caught, and Peter soon became an active participant.
Oh,
that's sick.
I hate that.
He later claimed his first murders happened at this time. When he pushed a friend.
When he was 9?
When he was 9. When he pushed a friend from school who he knew couldn't swim off of a log raft while playing in the river. A second boy who saw this attempted to save the drowning classmate met the same fate. Peter held the second boy's head under the water, resulting in both of the classmates drowning. When the authorities questioned Peter, he made it out to be just a horrible accident. So he was never charged with those 2 murders. And who's going to, look at a 9-year-old little kid and be like, did you murder them?
But, weren't there other people around?
Apparently not. It was just the 3 of them playing at the river.
That's fucked up.
9 years old.
You know what I was doing at 9?
Not that.
Not that. And I don't even think, we were raised as tomboys, so I was probably out back on my go-kart, doing innocent stuff.
Yeah.
Or rollerblading or something. Or cutting the Barbies' heads off.
What?
Yeah, not their heads, you know what I mean?
Their hair?
Their hair.
Giving them haircuts? That's a lot different. You were almost, serial killer.
I was almost.
esque there.
But, yeah, that's what I was doing at 9.
Oh, my gosh.
Not murdering people.
I guess you got to start someplace.
Got to start sometime.
Yep. When Peter was 13, he formed a relationship with a girl his age. She allowed Peter to undress and fondle her, which in itself was risque at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do that stuff in the 1800s. They would call you Jezebel.
Because you're not pure anymore.
Yeah. They would do that here too, I guess.
They would use different words.
Yeah, being 13.
It's like that movie 13.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? It's
I have.
fucked up.
Yep. But she would deny him any attempts he did to have intercourse. So she did have some self-respect.
Did they do anything, or she just undressed?
Undress and let him fondle her.
Okay.
But she wouldn't have intercourse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's even better.
well, yeah. I don't know. Not having an outlet for these sexual urges, Peter began committing bestiality on sheep and goats in nearby stables. He soon found that he reached an ultimate climax when he stabbed a sheep during intercourse. How do you go from just... Okay, one, I've never looked at an animal and been like, man, I want to tap that.
Right.
You know, never once. Never once. And then, if you've made that leap, okay, and you are, what would make you just think all of a sudden, okay, let me stab this while I'm doing, like, what is his mind like to just take that leap?
Well, to just fuck animals to begin with is obviously he's fucked up.
Yes.
So the next step would be stabbing, I guess.
I guess.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, man. Hematolagnia, I don't know. Words are hard, yo. Is a sexual fetish for blood, which evokes arousal when present in the fetishist's sexual partner, especially if nude. It is often accompanied by licking or drinking the blood through bloodletting or biting, which, you know, you do you, boo, if you're into that, you know, but not for me.
Not for me. No, thank you. No, sir.
Oh, man. Lots of people have lots of different kinks. Who am I to judge them? Anywho, I digress. His father was jailed for 3 years after being convicted of incest with Peter's 13-year-old sister.
Why?
Peter later began to rape the same poor sister right under his mother's nose.
So his dad and So he and his dad shared his sister.
Yes.
Okay, first off, disgusting. Second off, she's a child.
13, yep. That's sad.
That's sad.
That is so sad. I picked the worst cases.
You do.
And I literally, I have no idea. I just pick a name and I'm like, okay.
And I picked a name and mine was so super short. Like,
maybe I should start doing like a pre...
Just read it first.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. Man, these are some doozies. So Mrs. Kürten was the daughter of an affluent proprietor and sister to 5 brothers and sisters, all of whom lived to an old age. She was secured separation from her husband following his incest and imprisonment. And in 1911, she remarried. She later died in 1927, so she didn't live too long, unfortunately. Peter ran away from home again at the age of 16, relocating to the city of Koblenz after stealing all the money he could find in the house as well as money from his employer at the time. He started a relationship with a sex worker that was 2 years his senior. So he was 16, so she was 18. Mm-hmm. So not too bad there.
No.
He stated that she was up for every and any dark sexual perversion he could imagine. Which, okay. You know,
I mean, 2 peas in a pod, I guess.
This relationship didn't last long, though, as a month later, Peter was arrested and charged with breaking and entering as well as theft. He was sentenced to a month in jail, which that's not anything, really.
For all that?
For breaking and entering and theft.
A month.
Well, he was released in August of the same year. During 1899, Peter picked up an 18-year-old girl and convinced her to accompany him to Hofgarten, which is a pretty court garden in the middle of Munich, Germany.
Okay.
So it's a really pretty place if you look at pictures.
Well, at least he took her somewhere nice.
Yeah, you know.
Before he probably did some perverted shit.
The two had sex in the garden, and he strangled her until she passed out. He luckily thought she was dead and just left her there. She sadly never reported the assault, as it would have been more detrimental to her reputation for an unwed girl at the time to admit she was having sexual relations in the park.
Yeah.
So he got away with that one. It was after this attack that Peter believed he had to hurt people in order to achieve the greatest sexual release imaginable.
He couldn't just go with mediocre?
No, he wanted it all, man. He wanted fireworks. In 1900, he got arrested again for fraud. The theft from his family and former employer the previous year, along with an attempted murder, again of a young woman, but this time with a firearm, were added to his charges of fraud. He was convicted and sentenced to 4 years. Attempted murder, 4 years. That's it.
Attempted murder. Wow. We need to move to Germany, I guess, if we want to do something bad.
Apparently. In the summer of 1904, Peter was released, but was almost immediately drafted into the Imperial German Army. It was in what was often called the 20th century's first genocide. The German colonial authorities from 1904 to 1906 set out systematically to exterminate 2 ethnic groups, the Herero and the Nama, following an uprising that was then German Southwest Africa and what is now Namibia. He was deployed to Metz, which is a city in Lorraine region in France that was actually under the German control until after World War I.
Okay.
After the battle in France in World War II, that city actually was annexed by Nazi Germany. So they got it back. He was there to serve on the 98th Infantry Regiment, which he quickly deserted. And the army wasn't for him, apparently.
Apparently not. Good. Because if the army let people like that in, we'd be all fucked.
During the autumn, he began acts of arson, which he would, the trifecta. The majority of these fires were set to barns and haylofts. He later confessed to police that he set a total of 24 fires after deserting the army before being caught on New Year's Eve. Jesus. He smiled the entire time, getting sexual satisfaction watching it burn, with the thoughts of the possibility that there might be homeless people in the barns burning to death. Just
because that's something to be happy about.
Yeah, that's what got him
or
off.
Sexually aroused by.
Yeah. Because of his desertion, he was tried in military court and was convicted of desertion in addition to robbery, attempted robbery, and several counts of arson. He served 8 years this time in Munster, where he spent his time in solitary confinement due to insubordination. So he doesn't listen to authority well. While in prison, rage against the machine, rage against society and humanity, as
I was going to say,
increased.
I like rage.
Me too. Also, his urges for bloodshed became unbearable.
Oh, gosh.
Since being in military prison, he was exposed to extreme forms of punishment. So while focusing on his memories of blood spraying mixed with violent thoughts of the extreme punishments, Kürten would spontaneously just ejaculate. Like he'd just be thinking about it and
without doing anything?
Without
just
doing
thinking.
Just thinking about the violence and the blood.
So then what are we doing here? Men are liars. They don't need us at all.
Apparently. It was all just too vivid of a fantasy in his mind to contain. Barf.
Disgusting.
He was released from prison in 1913 and started anew in Mulheim am Rhein. Again, I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce these Germans.
If you know, let us know.
No, I even tried to Google pronunciations of it and listen to it, but it's just a lost cause. On May 25th, 1913, during the course of a burglary at a tavern in Mulheim am Rhein, he encountered the 9-year-old daughter of the innkeeper named Christine Klein,
Nope.
asleep in her bed.
Nope.
I swear I don't mean to pick the ones with the kids in it. Next time I'm doing a spooky story. I'm sorry. Kürten strangled the child, then slashed her twice across the throat with a pocket knife, ejaculating as he heard the blood dripping from her wounds onto the floor by her bed and onto his hand. Later, Kürten spoke of the murder. I broke into a house in the Wolfstrasse, an inn owned by Klein, and went up to the first floor. I opened different doors and found nothing worth stealing. But in the bed, I saw a sleeping girl of about 10, covered with a thick feather bed. Her head was facing the window. I seized it with my left hand and strangled her for about a minute and a half. I had a small but sharp pocket knife with me, and I held the child's head and cut her throat. I heard the blood spurt and drip on the mat beside her bed. It spurted in an arch right over my hand. The whole thing lasted about 3 minutes. Then I went back, locked the door again, and went back home to Dusseldorf. The following day, Kürten specifically returned to Cologne to drink in the tavern located directly across from the one that he had murdered Klein in.
Okay.
So that he could listen to the locals' reaction of the murder of the little girl.
What a sick fuck.
He later recollected to investigators that he derived an extreme sense of gratification from the general disgust and repulsion and outrage that he heard from them, which, that's just, I can't imagine being that sick in the head.
To find satisfaction in things like that.
Yeah, and, purposely going back to just hear the sadness.
Like, hey, guys, I should get a blue ribbon for this because I did that. Like, fuck off.
In the weeks following Klein's funeral, Kürten occasionally traveled to Mulheim am Rhein to visit her grave, adding that when he handled the soil covering the grave, he would spontaneously ejaculate again. So, touching the soil,
even just touching the soil?
Touching the soil. This dude needs to get a grip.
Telling you, we've been lied to.
His pants must be so crusty and gross at this point. Like, he's just coming here and coming there.
Literally.
He probably can't even walk. Great,
right.
Great. Oh, man.
As my niece used to say when she was little, "usgusting."
Yeah, that's disgusting.
That's disgusting.
Her father, Peter Klein, owned the tavern, and suspicion immediately fell onto his brother Otto. What a German name, Otto.
Like OTTO?
Uh-huh. On the previous evening, Otto Klein had... I know.
That's a funny name. I'm
Otto
sorry.
Klein.
Otto Klein.
Had asked his brother for a loan and had been refused. In a violent rage, he had threatened to do something his brother would remember all his life. In the room Christine had been killed, the police found a handkerchief with the initials PK, and it seemed conceivable that Otto had borrowed it from his brother Peter. But it was really
Peter.
Kürten. Yep. Suspicion of Otto was deepened by the fact that the murder seemed otherwise motiveless. The child had been throttled unconscious. Her throat had been cut with a sharp knife. There were signs of some sexual molestation, but not rape. And again, it seemed possible that Otto Klein had penetrated the child's genitals in order to provide an apparent motive for the murder. He was charged with Christine's murder, but the jury, although partly convinced of his guilt, felt that the evidence was not sufficiently strong enough, and he was rightly acquitted. So he almost went to prison
for his dumbass brother.
Yeah. 2 months later, again while committing a burglary, with the aid of a skeleton key, Kürten broke into a home in Dusseldorf. Discovering a 17-year-old girl named Gertrude Franken.
See, another name I would like.
Another Gertrude. Asleep in her bed, Kürten manually strangled the girl, ejaculating at the sight of blood spouting from her mouth before leaving the crime scene. Like, he better watch where he's stepping. He's just going to slip in his cum.
Well, my thing is I know it's back in the 1800s, but like,
Well, we're in the 1900s now.
Don't they have like DNA stuff? I know it's still kind of early.
No, they don't.
No, they didn't have that then.
No.
That's too bad.
I know, right?
Because he's leaving his shit everywhere.
He's got a trail of cum. Kürten managed to escape from the scene of this attempted murder and the earlier murder of Klein undetected, but soon found himself in prison once more for burglary and arson for another 6 years. But due to insubordination, his sentence was extended an additional 2 years. So 8 years total this time. In 1921, he moved in with his sister. I'm assuming it's not the sister he raped. But still, I feel it's weird because you would assume that the whole family knows that he raped his sister.
Well, yeah, because didn't the mom? Well, was the mom not around at that time? Did she had already left?
Well, no, the mom was still. He was doing it underneath her nose.
Okay,
so
yeah, I would assume.
I would assume his whole family would know, but I don't know. Anyways, he moved in with his sister in the city of Altenburg. With Kürten's sister's assistance, he began a romance and ended up marrying Auguste Scharf, a former sex worker, because, you know, I would introduce my siblings to sex workers for romantic partners.
Who wouldn't?
Who also had gone to prison for the murder of her former fiancé.
And she's out of prison now.
Yes.
So, like I said, we need to go to Germany if we want to do anything bad.
Because they just let everybody out.
Jesus, criminy.
He spent the next 4 years living a life of relative normality and found work as a molder, which was also his father's profession, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Even becoming active in the trade union. This normality was short-lived, though, and Kürten found himself drawn to Dusseldorf, where his criminal tendencies escalated from petty crimes to arson attacks and then to sexual attacks, 4 of which are certainly attributable to him in the period up until like 1929.
Okay.
One unlucky or lucky victim, depending on how you look at it, Maria Cohn, survived repeated stabbing by Kürten that caused 24 individual stab wounds. So
Jeez.
24 times he stabbed her. This crime escalation reached its peak with the killing of 9-year-old Rosa Allinger on February 9th, 1929. She was stabbed 13 times by Kürten, who ejaculated during the brutal attack, of course. Wouldn't expect anything else from him.
Nope.
Before he dumped her
original.
Before he dumped her body under a hedge, then attempted to set fire to her remains to destroy the evidence. The murderer had also stabbed her in the vagina, and seminal stains on her knickers indicated that he had experienced climax.
Oof, that just gave me the chills. Like, that's gross. And stabbed in the vagina?
Yeah, a little 9-year-old girl stabbed in the vagina. The evidence showed the cause and time of death, as well as for the motive of the murderer. The characteristic stabs, the congestion of blood that was found in the head, and the injury to the genitalia, investigators determined Kürten's objective had not been intercourse, but that he must have inserted a finger smeared with semen under the unopened knickers of the child and thus inserted it into the vagina.
So at least he didn't rape her.
No.
But he stabbed her in the
vagina. I can't. Only 5 days after the murder of Rosa, a 45-year-old mechanic named Rudolf Scheer was found stabbed to death on the road in Flingern. He had 20 knife wounds, including several in the head. On the following day, Kürten once again returned to the scene of his attack and even had the audacity to strike up a conversation with a detective on the site. Although suspicious, the policeman clearly had no reason for concern, and so he spoke frankly about the crime with him, which was confirmed during the trial by the detective in question. Shortly after the spat of violations, a moron named Strasberg was arrested for assaulting 2 women with a noose. Naturally, the police accused Strasberg of the February attacks, and for some reason, unknown to this day, he confessed to all the crimes and was removed to an insane asylum.
What?
Yeah, so this dude just took credit for all of Kürten's handiwork.
And went to an insane asylum.
Yep.
So he took credit for all of it. Why didn't they send him to prison?
Because apparently they found him cray-cray.
I mean, if you're doing all that shit, though, you are cray-cray.
Yeah, you'd have to be. Kürten did not attempt to strangle... Kürten did attempt to strangle 4 women between March and July 1929, one of whom he claimed to have thrown into the Rhine River. He's not known to have killed any further victims until August 11th, when he raped, strangled, then repeatedly stabbed a young woman named Maria Hahn. Kürten had first encountered Hahn, whom he described as a girl looking for marriage, on August 8th, and had arranged to take her out on a date to the Neanderthal district of Dusseldorf the following Sunday. After several hours in Hahn's company, Kürten lured her into a meadow in order that he could kill her. He later admitted Hahn had repeatedly pleaded with him to spare her life, as he alternately strangled her, stabbed her in the chest and head, or sat astride her body waiting for her to die. Hahn died approximately 1 hour after Kürten had begun attacking her. Fearful his wife might connect the blood stains she had noted on his clothes with Hahn's murder, Kürten later buried her body in a cornfield, only to return to her body several weeks later with the intention of nailing her decomposing remains to a tree in a mock crucifixion to shock and disgust the public. So he just wants...
He's a fucked up individual.
He just likes shocking people.
He likes that shock value.
Yeah. That's what... Oh, he's messed up.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. Yeah. However, Hahn's remains proved too heavy for Kürten to complete the act. He couldn't lift it up and nail. And he simply had to return her corpse to her grave before embracing and caressing the decomposing body.
No.
As he lay beneath her remains. So now we're getting a little necrophilia here going on.
Shut up.
He then reburied her body. According to Kürten's later confession, both before and after he had attempted to impale Hahn's corpse to a tree, he went to the grave many times and kept improving on it. And every time I thought of what was lying there and was filled with satisfaction. 3 months after Kürten had murdered Hahn, he posted an anonymous letter to the police in which he confessed to the murder, adding that her remains had been buried in a field. In this letter, Kürten also drew a crude map describing the location of the remains. This letter would prove sufficiently detailed to enable investigators to locate her remains on November 15th. So at least she was eventually found.
I mean, that's a little bit of closure, but...
Sure not the closure her family wanted.
No.
Later that August, however, a series of strangulation and stabbing incidents made the police aware that a madman was once again on the prowl. On the 21st of the month, in the western suburb of Lierenfeld, 3 people were stabbed while walking home at night. The 3 random victims were all told, "Good evening," before being stabbed with a deep knife in the ribs and back.
Oh my gosh.
Good evening, stab.
Right. Give me a chance to say it back at least.
As the lights went out on the night of the 23rd of August in 1929, hundreds of people were enjoying the annual fair in the ancient town of Flehe, Flehe,
Flahy?
At around 10:30 p.m., two foster sisters, 5-year-old Gertrude, another Gertrude, Hamacher, and 14-year-old Louise Lenzen, left the fair and started walking through the adjoining allotments to their home. As they did so, a shadow broke away from among the trees and followed them along the footpath. The shadow stopped the children and asked whether Louise would be very kind and get some cigarettes for me. I'll look after the little girl. Louise took the man's money and ran back towards the fairground. Like, how dumb do you have to be, kid?
It's a stranger.
And you're going to leave this 5-year-old kid with them? I mean, I understand you're only 14, but you should know better to leave.
You're 14. You know better. You know right from wrong.
Anyway, so she ran back to the fairground. Quietly, the man picked up Gertrude in his arms and strangled her, before slowly cutting her throat with a clasp knife. Louise returned a few moments later and was dragged off the footpath before being strangled and decapitated.
Oh, wow. He really took it really far that time.
Yeah. On the following afternoon, a servant girl named Gertrude, man, a bunch of Gertrudes, man, Schlute, or Schulte, maybe, Schulte, yeah, was accosted by a man who tried to persuade her to have sexual intercourse. When she said, "I'd rather die," he answered, "Die then," and stabbed her.
Gosh.
Fortunately, though, she survived and was able to give a good description of her assailant, who proved to be a pleasant-looking, nondescriptive man of about 40. By the late summer of 1929, the murders committed by the individual the press had dubbed the Vampire of Dusseldorf were receiving considerable nation and international attention. I bet that was just making him so happy.
Oh, of course. He got a name now.
I think that's a bad thing. Like, giving all these serial killers
nicknames.
Yeah,
that's what gives them the.
That's what makes them
want to do these things.
Yeah.
That's what gives them the.
They feel
make them feel infamous.
Yeah,
like that's
famous. Like
they,
they've made it.
Yeah, like that's the goal. They're like, oh shit, like I'm top dog because I got a nickname, which means I'm fucking the shit, and they're gonna make books and movies for me.
And they do.
And they do. I mean, thankfully they don't get the money. I hope the victims get the money, the victims' families.
I'm sure nobody gets to that and the money, except for the people making the movies.
Yeah, but hopefully somebody's nice enough to give it back to the
families.
Hopefully.
Due to the sheer savagery of the murders, the diverse backgrounds of the victims, and the differing methods in which they had been assaulted and or murdered, both the police and the press theorized the spat of assaults and murders were the work of more than one perpetrator. By the end of 1929, Dusseldorf police had received more than 13,000 letters from the public. With assistance from surrounding police forces, each lead was painstakingly pursued. As a result of this collective investigation into the killings, more than 9,000 individuals were interviewed. 2,650 other clues painstakingly pursued, and a list of 900,000 different names were compiled upon an official potential suspect list. Could you imagine? Like, how would you even... There's no way you're going to find the killer through all of that.
No.
Talk about a needle in a haystack. Kürten had by now reached his sexual overdrive, and the increasing frequency and ferocity of the attacks convinced medical experts that the vampire, as the assailant had been deemed, had lost all control of his sadistic impulses, which that's about right.
Mm-hmm.
A young girl named Ida Reuter was raped and battered to death in September, and on the 12th of October, my birthday, I
wouldn't be happy about that right now.
Oh no, but it's my birthday.
Yeah, that's true.
Another servant girl by the name of Elizabeth Dorier was beaten to death. This was followed by hammer attacks on Frau Muir and Frau Wanders, both on the 25th of October. Frau, however you pronounce it, is just German for a wife or a Mrs.
A Frau.
Frau. Is that how you say it?
I think so. Frau.
Frau.
Yeah, don't they say that on
Austin Powers?
Austin Powers?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know why I was thinking. I don't know what I was thinking of saying, but yeah, Austin Powers.
Okay. I should have thought back of that.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a good movie, though.
It was a good movie.
I missed those.
Send in the clouds.
The city of Dusseldorf was thrown into a panic comparable to that that was caused by Jack the Ripper.
Oh.
As the murder toll continued to mount.
Wait. So was this the same time as Jack the Ripper?
No, this is much after Jack the Ripper.
Okay, because he was early.
Yeah, that was way before
1600s or something like that?
I don't know when, but it was a lot sooner than this.
Okay.
But they were panicking.
Because they thought.
Yeah. It was just comparable to the panic that was caused during that time.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
On the 7th of November, 5-year-old Gertrude Alberman, another Gertrude. So you don't want to name your kid Gertrude because she's going to end up dead.
Yeah, moral of the story,
Yeah.
Don't name your kid Gertrude.
As pretty as it may be, don't do it.
No. I mean, I like the name, but no.
5-year-old Gertrude Alberman disappeared, and 2 days later, the newspaper Freedom received a letter with a map enclosed, stating that the child's body would be found near a factory wall. The body was indeed found there, and amongst a mass of bricks and rubble. He had persuaded the child to accompany him to the section of deserted allotments, where he seized her by the throat and strangled her, stabbing her once in the left temple with a pair of scissors, which I guess he used scissors a lot too. I know it's mostly been mentioning the knife. But he used scissors a lot too to stab. When Gertrude collapsed to the ground without a sound, Kürten stabbed the child 34 more times in the temple and chest before placing her body in a pile of nettles close to the factory wall. The murder of Gertrude Alberman proved to be Kürten's final fatal attack, although he did engage in a bunch of non-fatal hammer attacks and attempted strangulations between February and May 1930, maiming 10 victims. All the victims survived, and many were able to describe their attacker to police. On May 14, 1930, an unknown man approached a 20-year-old woman named Maria Budlick at Dusseldorf station. Every time I say Dusseldorf, it makes me think of Dumbledore. Dumbledore.
Well, I know it makes me think of Doofenshmirtz or whatever his name is from Phineas and Ferb.
Oh, I don't watch Phineas and Ferb.
I love Phineas and Ferb.
Discovering Budlick and had traveled to Dusseldorf from Cologne in search of lodgings and employment, he offered to direct her towards a local hostel. Budlick agreed and followed the man, although she became apprehensive when he attempted to lead her through a scarcely, if I could speak.
Words are hard.
Yep, a scarcely populated park. The pair began to argue when another man approached the two, asking whether Budlick was being pestered by her companion. When Budlick nodded, the man she had been arguing with simply walked away. The identity of the man who reportedly came to Budlick's help was Peter Kürten. She would have been better off staying with the other guy. Kürten then invited the distressed young woman to his apartment on Manor Street to eat and drink before Budlick, correctly deducing the underlying motive for Kürten's hospitality, stated she was uninterested in having sex with him. Kürten calmly agreed and offered to lead Budlick to a hotel or a hostel, although he instead lured her into the Grafenberg woods, where he seized her by the throat and attempted to strangle her as he raped her. When Budlick began to scream, Kürten released his grasp on her throat before allowing her to leave. So he just gave up on this one. Budlick did not
That's
report.
not like him.
No.
I mean, who likes a quitter?
Budlick did not report this assault to police, but described her ordeal in a letter to a friend, although she addressed the letter incorrectly. As such, the letter was opened at the post office by a clerk on May 19th. Upon reading the contents of the letter, the clerk forwarded the letter then to the Dusseldorf police. The letter was read by Chief Inspector Gennett, who assumed there was a slim chance Budlick's assailant might be the Dusseldorf murderer. Gennett interviewed Budlick, who recounted her ordeal, further divulging on one of the reasons Kürten had spared her was because she had falsely informed him that she could not remember his address. But she could. So she agreed to take the police to Kürten's home on Met Manor Street, where the landlady of the property let Budlick into room number 71. Budlick confirmed to Gennett that this was the address of her assailant. The landlady confirmed to the chief inspector the tenant's name was Peter Kürten, so he's busted.
Mm-hmm.
Although Kürten was not at home when Budlick and Gennett searched his property, he spotted the pair in the communal hallway and promptly left. Knowing that his identity was now known to the police and suspecting they may also have connected him to the crimes committed by the vampire of Dusseldorf, Kürten confessed to his wife he had raped Budlick and that because of his previous convictions, he may receive 15 years penal labor. With his wife's consent, he found lodgings in the Adler Street district of Dusseldorf and did not return to his home until May 23rd. Upon returning home, Kürten confessed to his wife that he was the vampire of Dusseldorf. He urged his wife to collect the substantial reward offered for his capture.
Oh.
So he's like, I'm already been made. They know who I am. So
you might as well get some perk out of this.
You might as well get the money, which is kind of sweet.
He's setting her up, I guess. Like, here you go. I'm going to jail, so here you can turn me in and take the money.
So she then contacted the police the following day. In the information provided to detectives, I'm getting all tongue-tied because it's been a lot of talking.
There's been a lot of talking.
Kürten's wife explained that although she had known her husband had been repeatedly imprisoned in the past, she was unaware of his culpability in any murders. She then added that her husband had confessed to her his that he was responsible for the Dusseldorf murders and that he was willing to likewise confess to the police. He was to meet her outside St. Rochus Church later that day. That afternoon, Kürten was arrested at gunpoint. So, he's been caught.
Good.
Yay. Kürten freely admitted his guilt in all the crimes police had attributed to the vampire of Dusseldorf and further confessed he had committed the unsolved murder of Christine Klein and the attempted murder of Gertrude Franken in 1913. In total, Kürten admitted to 68 crimes, including 9 murders and 31 attempted murders.
Jesus.
So he doesn't have a very good close rate there.
No, 9 murders?
Out of 31 attempted.
But would you add the 9 to the 31, so 40? 9 actually died, 31 were
maybe, yeah.
attempted.
He made no attempt to excuse his crimes, but justified them on the basis of what he saw as the injustices he had endured throughout his life. Nonetheless, he was adamant that he had not tortured any of his child victims. Which, okay, that makes it okay.
He did too torture them. Well, I mean,
he's saying he strangled them, like killed them right away.
Yeah, like he didn't like chain them up and do all that stuff. Yeah, I guess I could see that. It's still torture, either way.
Kürten also admitted to both investigators and psychiatrists that the actual sight of his victim's blood was on many occasions sufficient to bring him to orgasm, and that on occasion, if he experienced ejaculation in the act of strangling a woman, he would immediately become apologetic to his victim, proclaiming, "That's what love is all about."
Oh, yes. Please.
He further claimed to have drunk the blood from the throat of one victim, from the temple of another, and to have licked the blood from a third victim's hand. In the Han murder, he had drunk so much blood from the neck wound that he had vomited. Ugh.
That's disgusting.
You know, people aren't supposed to drink blood.
No.
Like, we can't digest it. There's too much iron in it. It makes you sick.
Ugh.
Obviously. That's the problem I have.
Right.
It makes you sick. Kürten also...
You shouldn't drink it. It makes you sick.
Yeah, that's why you shouldn't drink it.
Don't
Not
kill
because
people.
It's gross and
Disgusting.
not what you should do.
Right.
Kürten also admitted to having decapitated a swan in the spring of 1930 in order that he could drink the blood from the animal's neck, achieving ejaculation in the process.
Well, he did do bestiality, so
Yeah.
that doesn't surprise me that he was orgasming. It's late.
Yeah.
To a swan.
Yeah. But he didn't fuck the swan. He just
No, but the blood made him.
decapitated it and drank the blood. Whatever. As Kürten awaited his trial, then later as he awaited his execution, he was extensively interviewed by Dr. Carl Berg. In these interviews, Kürten stated to Dr. Berg that his primary motive in committing any form of criminal activity was one of sexual pleasure, and that he had begun to associate sexual excitement with violent acts and the sight of blood via indulging in both daydreams and masturbation fantasies, particularly when he had been isolated from human contact. The majority of his assaults and murders had been committed when his wife had been working evenings, and the number of stabs or bludgeoning wounds Kürten inflicted upon each victim had varied depending upon the length of time it had taken for him to achieve an orgasm. So the longer it took, the more you're getting hit.
Ugh.
Furthermore, the actual sight of his victim's blood had been integral to his sexual stimulation. Kürten further elaborated to Dr. Berg that once he had committed an attack or murder, that feeling of tension he experienced before the commission of the crime would be superseded by one of relief. In reference to the actual choice of weapon used in his attacks, Kürten stressed that although he had changed his actual method of attack to deceive investigators into believing that they were seeking more than one perpetrator, the weapon he used was inconsequential in reference to his ultimate objective of seeing his victim's blood. Elaborating, Kürten stated, "Whether I took a knife or a pair of scissors or a hammer in order to see blood was a matter of indifference to me or mere chance. Often after the hammer blows, the bleeding victims moved and struggled, just as they did when they were throttled." Kürten further confided that although he had occasionally penetrated his female victims, he had only done so to feign the act of intercourse as a motive for his crimes. He also confessed that many of his later strangulation victims had only survived his attacks because he had achieved an orgasm in the early throes of the assault.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah.
So he only had sex with them to make them think that that was the motive.
Yeah.
Not because he enjoyed it.
Yeah, not because
He's fucked up.
raping people and killing people. No. Just to throw him off track. However, Kürten contradicted these claims by proclaiming to both Dr. Berg and legal examiners that his primary motive in all of his criminal activities was to both strike back in an oppressive society for what he considered the injustice of his being repeatedly incarcerated throughout his life, and as a form of revenge for the neglect and abuse he had endured as a child. These desires had fermented in his mind throughout the long periods he had been in solitary confinement for various forms of insubordination, and Kürten explained that he deliberately broke minor prison rules as a means of guaranteeing that he would be sentenced to solitary confinement in order that he can indulge in these psychosexual fantasies. To Dr. Burge and the legal examiners, Kürten did not deny that he had sexually molested his female victims or to have stroked or digitally penetrated their genitals as he stabbed, slashed, strangled, or bludgeoned their bodies. Although throughout his trial, Kürten consistently claimed the sexual assault of his victims was not his primary motive. It doesn't matter if it was his primary motive or not. Like,
you
still did it.
Yeah. Like, anything that you did doesn't necessarily need to have a motive, but
that's part of it.
You did what you did because you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like, you're a sick fuck.
He's a sick fuck. Both Berg and other psychologists concluded Kürten was not insane, was fully able to control his actions, and appreciated the criminality of his conduct. Each ruled Kürten was legally sane and competent to stand trial. On April 13th, 1931, Peter Kürten stood trial in Dusseldorf. He was charged with 9 counts of murder and 7 of attempted murder and was tried before a presiding judge, Dr. Rose. Kürten pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, of course, to each of the charges. Aside from delivering testimony, Kürten would spend the duration of his trial surrounded by a heavily guarded shoulder-high iron cage specifically constructed to protect him from attack from enraged relatives of the victims. So
I say let him fucking go.
Yeah, let them have him. His feet were also shackled whenever he was inside the cage. Proceedings
I hope he felt like a fucking animal. Like those animals that he hurt. I hope. Piece of shit.
Proceedings began with the prosecution formally reciting each of the charges against Kürten before they recited the formal confession he had provided to police following his arrest. When then asked by the presiding judge to describe why he had continued to commit acts of arson throughout 1929 and 1930, Kürten explained, "When my desire for injuring people awoke, the love of setting fire to things awoke as well. The sight of the flames excited me, but above all, it was the excitement of all attempts to extinguish the fire and the agitation of those who saw their property being destroyed." So he got off on watching people trying to control the chaos he was creating.
This dude has a lot of triggers. Like, a lot of things get him off.
Yeah. Like I'm saying, he's just leaving a trail of jizz behind him. Everything gets him off.
Everything. The wind blowing in his hair, probably.
Yeah. Having first claimed that his initial confession had been delivered to simply allow his wife to recoup the reward money offered for the capture of the Dusseldorf vampire, several days into his trial, Kürten instructed his defense attorney that he wished to change his plea to one of guilty. Addressing the court, Kürten proclaimed, "I have no remorse as to whether recollection of my deeds makes me feel ashamed. I will tell you that thinking back to all the details is not at all unpleasant. I rather enjoy it."
Of course he does.
Further pressed as to whether he considered himself to possess a conscience, Kürten stated he did not. Nonetheless, when pressed as to his motivation in confessing, Kürten reiterated, "Why don't you understand that I am fond of my wife and that I am still fond of her? I have done many wrongs, have been unfaithful over and over again. My wife has never done any wrong. Even when she heard of my many prison sentences I have served, she said, 'I won't let you down, otherwise you'll be lost altogether.' I wanted to fix for my wife a carefree old age."
I mean, least he cared for his wife to take care of her.
Yeah, well, he's still raping and killing other women.
Yeah.
Children.
Animals.
Ugh. To counteract Kürten's insanity defense, the prosecution introduced 5 of the most eminent doctors and psychiatrists in Germany to testify at the trial. Each testified that Kürten was legally sane and had been perfectly in control of his actions and impulses at all times. Typical of the testimony delivered by these experts was that of Professor Franz Cioli, who testified as to Kürten's actual motivation in his crimes being the desire to achieve the sexual gratification he demanded, and that this satisfaction could only be achieved by the acts of brutality, violence, and Kürten's knowledge of the pain and misery his actions were causing to others. So he's just messed up in his head.
Oh, yeah.
Further proof of Kürten's awareness was referenced by the premeditated nature of his crimes, his ability to abandon an attack if he sensed a risk of being disturbed, and his acute memory of both his crimes and their chronological detail. Also disclosed in the first week of the trial were the deaths of the 2 boys whom Kürten had confessed to drowning at the age of 9, with the prosecution suggesting these deaths indicated Kürten had displayed a homicidal propensity dating much earlier than 1913. However, this view was disputed by medical witnesses who suggested that although indicative of inherent depravity, these 2 deaths should not be compared to Kürten's later murders, as to a child, the death of a friend can be seen as nothing more than a consequential passing. Okay.
So, like, they didn't want people to know?
It's just saying that
They
can't compare it to the murders because children don't look at death the same way as adults do. So the passing of his friends didn't mean as much as what
the other ones did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or at least that's how I'm understanding it.
Okay.
Upon cross-examination, Kürten's defense attorney, Dr. Alex Wenner, did challenge these experts' conclusions, arguing the sheer range of perversions his client had engaged in was equivalent to insanity, which I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
However, each doctor and psychiatrist remained adamant as to Kürten being legally sane and responsible for his actions, which I agree with too.
Yep.
He's responsible, but he is cray-cray.
He knew what he was doing.
In a further attempt to discredit the validity of many of the charges recited at the opening stages of the trial, Werner also questioned whether the occasional physical inaccuracy of the crime described in his client's confession equated to Kürten having fabricated at least some of the crimes, thus supporting his contention Kürten possessed a diseased mind. I would say he possessed a diseased mind.
For sure.
In response, Dr. Burr conceded that sections of Kürten's confessions were false. He argued that the knowledge he possessed of the murder scenes and the wounds inflicted upon the victims left him in no doubt as to his guilt, and that the minor embellishments in his confessions could be attributed to Kürten's narcissistic personality. The trial lasted 10 days. On April 22nd, the jury retired to consider their verdict. They deliberated for under 2 hours before reaching their verdict. Kürten was found guilty and sentenced to death on 9 counts of murder.
And what about the attempted murders? Or the assaults?
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
He was also found guilty of 7 counts of attempted murder. So only 7 out of the 31 that they said he did.
Right.
Kürten displayed no emotion as the sentence was passed, although in his final address to the court, he stated that he now saw his crimes as being so ghastly that he did not want to make any sort of excuse for them.
But he wanted to plead insanity.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense.
Kürten did not lodge an appeal for his conviction, although he submitted a petition for pardon to the Minister of Justice, who was a known opponent of capital punishment. The petition was formally rejected on July 1st. Kürten remained composed upon receipt of this news and asked for permission to see his confessor, to write letters of apology to the relatives of his victims, and a final farewell letter to his wife. All of these requests were granted.
Oh, see. I could see the letters to the families. But you don't get to say goodbye to anybody else because you took something from somebody else. Why should you get a chance to say goodbye? They didn't.
Yeah. I don't know. On the evening of July 1st, 1931, Kürten received his last meal. He ordered Wiener Schnitzel, a bottle of white wine, and fried potatoes. Kürten ate the entire meal before requesting a second helping. The prison staff decided to grant his request. At 6 o'clock on the morning of July 2nd, Kürten was beheaded by guillotine in the grounds of Klingelputz prison in Cologne. His executioner was Karl Groppler. He walked unassisted to the guillotine, flanked by the prison psychiatrist and a priest. Shortly before his head was placed in the guillotine, Kürten turned to the prison psychiatrist and asked the question, "Tell me, after my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures." What a sick fuck.
Well, my question is, when did he get executed?
The 2nd of July.
Of what year?
1931.
They were still doing beheadings then?
In Germany.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought that was kind of weird, but I mean, that's their culture, I guess.
When asked whether he had any last words to say, Kürten simply smiled and replied, "No." Keep it simple, man. Following Kürten's 1931 execution, his head was bisected and mummified. The brain was removed and subjected to forensic analysis in an attempt to explain his personality and behavior. The examinations of Kürten's brain revealed no abnormalities. The autopsy conducted upon Kürten's body revealed that, aside from his having an enlarged thymus gland, Kürten had not been suffering any physical abnormality. The interviews Kürten granted to Dr. Carl Berg in 1930 and 1931 proved to be the first psychological study conducted upon a sexual serial killer. These interviews are also the basis of Berg's book, The Sadist. Shortly after World War II, Kürten's head was transported to the United States. It is currently on display at the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in the Wisconsin Dells in Wisconsin. So that's kind of close to us. We can go
see it.
Yeah, day trip. Well, weekend trip.
Weekend trip.
Go see it. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
And that was Peter Kürten in all his glory.
Oh, so they didn't find anything wrong with him, so which means he's just a fucked up individual.
Yeah. Well, but okay. Also, this is 1931. What kind of test could they really, besides just opening it up and looking at, it looks like a brain.
It looks normal.
Yeah. What else could they do? They can't test
run it through computers and testing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's true.
If they had done that today, maybe they would have found something more.
Maybe.
I don't know.
That's true because they have more ways to test.
Yeah, they can do MRI scans and CAT scans and
all kinds of different computerized things.
Yeah.
So
that'd be interesting.
It would be interesting.
It's too bad that they don't do that now.
Right, and I'm sure they can't take his brain out now. And
no, it's probably all either it's in a jar somewhere or because they took it out.
How did they preserve his head?
They mummified his head.
Oh yeah. You did say that.
They mummified it.
Huh.
Which, if you can see the picture of it on Google, it's gnarly looking.
Ugh.
Yeah. It doesn't
And I
really.
think most people probably walk in there not knowing that it's a real head.
Yeah.
They probably think, oh, it's just some replica or something.
It doesn't look right. Like, not
No.
what you would think.
No. So.
I think they would have been better to just like, I don't know if they could have put it in a jar.
See, I
instead.
would look at a jar head.
I don't know if that's something they can do, but
I mean, they do with fetuses of animals. They
Yeah.
preserve them, put them in jars.
well, and organs and body parts.
Yeah.
At the building I work at Notre Dame, like it's a medical teaching school, and so they do autopsies and stuff down in the basement area, which I have to go down there frequently. And if you go into the room where they do that, they have like buckets with brains in it.
Like open buckets?
Well, they have lids on them, but yeah.
But you can see it?
You can see them, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I have to go in there and empty the trash, and I see all of that stuff, which is
That's
really
kind of
neat.
cool.
It
yeah.
is neat.
Yeah. I would like that.
Yeah.
So that's because we're fucked up too.
Yeah. I guess we all are a little fucked up,
A little bit.
but not that fucked up.
No, not Peter Kürten fucked up.
Yeah.
Or Albert Fish.
Yeah.
Eesh. So that's all we have for tonight. Today?
Tonight.
Tonight.
Well, it'll be morning when you guys hear it.
Yes.
So, well, we appreciate you listening. We hope you come back and hear us again soon. If you want to check us out on Facebook or email us at spinechillingchatspodcast@gmail.com. Send us your spooky stories or any kind of crime-related story you'd like to tell us. We'd love to hear them.
And we'd like to tell them on air if you allow us. So just let us know.
Yeah. And remember to
Keep it spooky.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on Spine Chilling Chats, your go-to podcast for all things murder, paranormal, and macabre. Keep sipping that spooky tea and diving into the darkness with us. If our tales have sent chills down your spine, don't forget to hit subscribe and share with your fellow lovers of the haunting and horrific. See you next time, and remember to
Keep it spooky.